Hey, everybody. Hey, this is Missionary Pam Finkley, Prophetess Pam King Finkley, coming to you today saying, God bless you. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you, replay viewers, for watching this later. I appreciate you all coming in and taking the time to be with me on today. Well, I just wanted to share with you um, some things today pertaining to how to know when God is speaking. I'm developing a class that's called Developing into a Bold and Confident Prophet. You know, it's for those who want to know how do I hear the voice of God? How do I know when to prophesy? How do I know that God is saying move forth now? How do I know when to step out in boldness to give the word of the Lord? I want to make sure that I'm not speaking in self, but I want to make sure I'm speaking in the spirit of God. I want to be that strong, that confident prophet that knows that this is the time that God is saying now is the time to move forth and to go and do what I have called you to do and say what I have called you to say. So I'm working on that class. And one of the modules in our class, we talk about how to hear the voice of God and how do you know when the Lord is speaking. One of the ways that determines when God is speaking, and one of the ways is circumstances. Circumstances. Sometimes circumstances will um, dictate the will of God. Sometimes it's circumstances that dictate the will of God. In Genesis chapter 31, verses 1 through 3, it says, And he heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's, and of that which was our father's hath he gotten all this glory. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. And the Lord said unto Jacob, Return unto the land of thy fathers and to thy kindred, and I will be with thee. So, this is the story of Jacob when he was living with his uncle Laban. And we know in this story, he was really running away from Esau. Many of us know the story about how Jacob stole the blessing of the first right from his brother Esau. So he was really running away from that, running from his brother and thinking that this will be a place of solace for me, and it was for a time. Sometimes we can be running away from something, and God will allow us to go into hiding, but then there comes a time that we have to deal with what we need to deal with. That we can't keep sweeping it under the carpet. We can't just keep acting like it's no big deal when it really is. It was an issue that God wanted Jacob to deal with. And in this instance here, we know that as Jacob was living with his uncle Laban and his cousins, um, while Jacob was there, Laban's his cattle, his farm, everything really was prosperous. But it seemed like God always prospered Jacob's Jacob had cattle, Jacob had produce and all of this, but it seemed like God just blessed Jacob a little bit more than his uncle Laban. It seemed like God just had a little extra favor on Jacob. It seemed like everything that Jacob did, it just prospered. It prospered. Matter of fact, there's a scripture that talks about that. I can't remember exactly where it is. But it seemed like Jacob just prospered the whole time. And well, there came a time when Jacob was dealing with the livestock of his uncle, and the Lord once again blessed Jacob to get the best of the best of Laban's livestock, of his cattle. And so what happened, it says, and when he heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Jacob hath taken away all that was our father's, He's taken it away. And that which was our father's hath he gotten all of this glory. In other words, Jacob is stealing our inheritance. His cattle is mating with our cattle, and he's getting the best of the cattle, the better ones. I mean, once again, it seemed like the Lord just really blessed Jacob in what he was doing. Um, and so, but now the cousins are upset. Now family is upset. Sometimes when you are really blessed, sometimes people will get upset at how blessed you are. It seems like, you're just so blessed. And what happens is people do, they get upset with that. And so, and it's not anything that's within your control. This had nothing to do with Jacob. It's just that that's just how the Lord did it for him. And so now look at what it says here. It says here, and Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. What happened? Now Laban is upset. You're getting the best of the cattle, you're getting the best of the best. And so what happened? Laban was now, he looked at his uncle's face and then even heard his cousins, and they were talking negative of him. They were talking bad of him. And it says, when he beheld the countenance of his uncle Laban, it says, it was not toward him as before, where before his uncle loved him. It was like, oh, Jacob, I love you. We're blessed because of you. We're glad you're here. Now they're kind of looking at him like, all of a sudden it's different. It's different now. And so Jacob knew things had changed. Do you know? And you know what? We have to know when things have changed for us. I remember one of my mentors preached a message on, I think it was called the winds of change, the winds of change. And you know what? We have to know when um, God is blowing the winds of change in our lives. And so Jacob knew at that moment in time that things have changed. Things have changed. We're talking about, how do I hear the voice of God? Or not so much, how do I hear the voice? How do I know when God is speaking? Sometimes, once again, circumstances will dictate the will of God. Sometimes it will. And in this case, we see that Jacob, that Laban and his sons, who was Jacob's uncle and his cousins, were not happy about him being there. It said their countenance had changed. Have you ever been around someone that, they love being, it seemed like you all just had a great time together. It was wonderful. And then all of a sudden, it's like they don't want to talk to you. They don't want to be around you anymore. They're not inviting you anywhere. And you're like, wow, I remember we used to do this. Like, what happened? Their countenance had changed. And then what happened? It says that the Lord said to Jacob, return unto the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with thee. God speaks in that. He speaks in that. Jacob knew things have changed. Things have changed. And then what happened? God spoke in the midst of that change, letting him know that I have ordered this change in your life. Some of you all are saying right now, why am I going through what I'm going through? It's because God has ordered that change in your life. And as prophets of God, we have to know when God is ordering a change. We have to know. It says here, he beheld the countenance of Laban. It was not toward him as before. He knew that there was change, that change had taken place. He knew that it had taken place. And that's when God spoke right after that. I want to encourage you, prophets. You sense things have changed, but wait for God to speak. Wait for God to speak. So Jacob knew things have changed, but now I have to yet wait for God to speak. I have to wait for God to speak. Now, sometimes you can be in a situation where you know things have changed and God will speak. But then there are times that you can be in a situation of change and God will not audibly speak to you. He will not audibly speak to you, but the circumstance will speak to you. the circumstance will speak to you. And I can speak on a personal note. I'm in a program, um, actually in my doctorate program, and I had um, I had let things lapse. I wasn't really working the program like I should have, and so I only got one class done. I should have been doing more classes, and so anyway, my student status went inactive because I was not. Um, Working like I needed to. And so I had to so the school sends an email saying, hey, if you want to reactivate your status, contact us and we'll work with you. And so how many of you all know that when the school sends you a letter saying, hey, do you want to finish your program? They're like, we want you to finish, but you got to want to finish it too. Now, that's God speaking right there. And I told them I had even contemplated, I think maybe I'm even going to change my degree program. I'm thinking about changing my degree program. And anyway, well, I told them I was thinking about doing it. And then when they started telling me, well, this is how much it's going to cost if you do that, I got to thinking, you know what? I think I'm gonna keep what I have. I think I'm gonna keep what I have because I'm like, I didn't realize it would be that much money to actually change my program. I did not realize it. But what it also showed me was that my conviction was not that strong to change into another degree program. Because if my conviction would have been strong, I would have said, yes, hey, I'll pay that money because I know that this is what God is wanting and this is what I must do. So I'm going to pay the price. You have to pay a price, you all. We have to pay a price when we don't do things on time and in time. There's a price, there's a higher price that has to be paid. But what I'm trying to say is, I didn't hear God speak and say, yes, Pam, I am talking to you, my daughter. Yea, my daughter, for I'm talking to you. You must pay this money for the class. I knew that I was at that crossroads to where I had to decide, will I um, do I want to reactivate my student status and finish this degree, or do I just want to not do it at all? And so once again, I didn't hear a voice, but I knew in my spirit that I had to make a decision. Either I was going to reactivate my student status, or I would change my degree program. So there was decisions that had to be made, and today was the deadline. That's another thing you get it when you get a deadline. That's God talking too. See, when you get a deadline, that's the Lord speaking too. So I had to make a decision, of what I was going to do. And so when she explained to me what it was, and I've been talking with them, just the last few days. And so, of course, I've been praying, like, Lord, what do I do? What do I do? And I've been praying along a while about this too. But when they explained to me how much it would be and what was involved, I knew right then and there, I knew what to do. And I told the lady today, I said, well, my conviction to change my degree program was not as strong as I thought it was. So we're just going to keep with what we had. Because when she mentioned the price, I was like, I don't want to pay that high of a price. I said, I can always bring in that type of study. I can bring it in another way. There's another way I can bring that in, and it's not going to cost like that. So I want to encourage you today. Sometimes circumstances will dictate the will of God. We see that with Jacob, his uncle Laban, and his cousins, how his countenance was not toward him as before. The favor that Jacob had with Laban, with his uncle Laban and his cousins, he didn't have that favor anymore, and and he knew something has changed. Something has changed, and God spoke right then and there. But Jacob knew something has changed. And then right after that, God spoke. So I want to encourage you, wait for the voice of God. And then there are times that God will not speak, but the situation is speaking. The situation is speaking. Now, I'm not saying that every circumstance that happens, that we just accept it, because we know, as people of God and as people of prayer, we can pray and change situations also through the power of prayer. You know, we can change situations. Um, so I know, but there are times when there's a situation that God will not change, and God is changing you. He's changing me. God is saying, you need to change. I'm not changing the situation, but I'm changing you. What happened with Jacob and his uncle Laban and his cousins? Jacob, God changed Jacob and said, Jacob, it's time for you to go back home. And it's time for you to deal with that thing that that thing you swept under the rug that I saw you do, that thing you stole from your brother. It's time to go back and make amends. It's time to do that. And so God, in his grace, allowed Jacob to go back and get things right. But I wanted to say that that circumstance dictated the will of God for Jacob. That circumstance dictated God's will. So I want to encourage you today. Just know. Sometimes you want to know. I want to hear the voice of God. How do I know when God is speaking? You know when God is speaking. When there's a situation, you must make a decision, and you got to make that decision now. You've got to make that decision now. And even if you say, well, my decision is not to make a decision. Well, you made a decision, but God speaks in circumstances. He speaks in it. It's not always going to be an audible voice, but sometimes it's going to be, and sometimes God will say, okay, then you have to go left or right. In my situation, I either had to reactivate my student status or stay inactive. That was, I mean, it was just one of two choices. And the third choice, of course, was to change my degree program, but it would have meant reactivating. So either I was reactivating or not reactivating. And that's really what God was saying. Do you want to reactivate or not reactivate? And I know that me getting this degree is, I believe it's a part of God's plan for me. And it's something that I have to discipline myself to do. And so I said, well, Lord, help me to do it and go forward with that. Because I'm telling you, sometimes there's a higher price we have to pay for um, being, for just playing around and or not being serious enough. You have to keep paying, and I don't want to pay anymore. They're like, well, we can extend you out 2 years, but if I extend you out 2 years, there was more money on top of that. So I said, oh no, the help of the Lord, I don't intend to do, an extra 2 years. I don't want to pay any more uh, than I need to, But I thank God that I was able to get reactivated, because some schools and things you have to reapply and you have to do all this, and it's a whole lot that goes into getting reactivated as a student. So I thank God that it could have been a whole lot worse. So I don't despise that, and I just thank God for that. But I wanted to encourage you with that today, uh, that sometimes circumstances dictate the will of God. I encourage you, like, follow, subscribe on my YouTube video. Check out some of the things that we have coming up on my website, shamarglobal.org. If this was a blessing to you, leave a comment below. It was great seeing you. Thank you so much for being with me today. God bless you.